Thanks a lot. I always enjoy this when I come back. Usually I haven't been so far away. I'm living out in Texas, and it's out in Texas. At least I feel it's out where I am. I've got 2 tapes I like to play. One is Spain, and I don't know what's on the other tape yet. Just my bass minus one things that I've done with the band back in Texas. Before I start, every time I do these things, I get a lot of questions about my career, and I always make a good statement that I think is really, really good. All the things that I've done really spanned a long year, many years. I think I started playing, doing sessions in 1967. Now, that's a long, long time ago. This is 1985. A lot of people ask about the more like Steely Dan or Rickie Lee Jones. Some go back to Quincy. Some go back to the Rascals. And back in those days, there weren't too many people to copy. James Jamerson was the only one. Motown became quite a record company back in that time, and I came up sort of listening to, after I had been playing the bass for a while and not playing R&B, I started copying Jamerson. I got as far as we all get when we start copying people. But I think it's a good idea to copy everybody that you like. Some of them are going to rub off on you, and you ain't going to really get close to copying them. You can get close to copying them, but by the time you play it, it's not going to be the same, but it will be maybe even better. I've written a series of books, and 5 of them are now published, and those books primarily don't align themselves to playing. They're sort of, one is an intermediate beginning book that starts from point A, or from what I think point A is, and it goes through to what I think the end of what harmony and theory to this instrument is. The second book is Traditional Playing Concepts, which basically talk about my point of view about jazz and about rhythm and blues, which are very, like a stale, not a stale, but a staple or a diet of which I came up on, rhythm and blues and jazz.
Let's say you go to a session, it's a rhythm section, and they give you a chord chart. They say we want a groove for this tune. We want to, feel you guys make it up. What usually happens?
Somebody makes up something. It's really that simple. Quincy does or did that a lot on most of his film dates. Especially the dates where he would start with the rhythm section first. And when you got creative guys, basically every time I've done it, I've just played something that I've just been jamming with in the bathroom. I say bathroom because it sounds good in there. I like the way the bass sounds in the bathroom. Especially if it's, the one that I use at home. It's small and the sound just resonates all around the place. They're usually, though, these people that just hand out chord charts, they have an idea what the concept is. And just thinking about Quincy, he would say, like, give me some wood, or he'd say, Rainey, play, give me some wood, which this is wood to him, slapping the bass. And I only have 3 or 4 habits there. Either I have a one hammer-on habit that I got, and then I got another rhythmic pattern that I play that has, it's basically the same idea. It's just improvising on that one pattern, and if that's what he wants, it's like I just push that button. Say say you're on a date with somebody like Steve Gadd or James Gadson or Harvey Mason, and then you got a Lee Ritenour or Jay Graydon or Dean Parks or somebody like that playing guitar, and then you got a, say if I'm on the session, or if it's not me, it's somebody who does it every day. And an orchestrator asks for you just to make up a groove. Out of those people, you're going to get a groove quicker than you can blink. Or you're going to get an idea, because everybody's full of ideas, and everybody would like to contribute. Because, if you come up with the idea, the next time this guy works, you can bet your last dollar that you're going to be there. Or even if you don't, just if you fit. But on chord charts, it's just a matter of just making up something, especially once people like Donny Hathaway and Richard T. and Quincy, they usually say it's something like, like, or I didn't do it. They're very, very physical. Very, very, very physical about it, to try and lead you into something. That's about how it works. Now, the fellows that I just named, is not that people like that come dime a dozen, they don't. But people who do that kind of work for a living, they do. Because anybody in if they do studio work, or even if they're a player, they can make up a line. It's just being that creative, which is, to me, has never been a problem. I've always been, well, you couldn't call me weird, but I certainly had something to lay down if you didn't have nothing. If you didn't write it, I had an idea, even before I heard it. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad, but the more we get settled into what we're doing. But I'm still one of those guys, I got an idea. And if you don't have a bass line, I got one for you. At least that's my idea, or that's how, and all I do is push one of my habits. And that's what everybody else, that's what they do too. They just, one of their habits. What is their favorite lick?
Yeah, I'm wondering, when you work with Steely Dan, I'm thinking of the tunes like Kid Charlemagne and Peg in particular. Did they tell you to put like a real kind of bouncy feel into that? And did you get to use a lot of your own creativity in those lines?
Yeah, well, those sessions were very unique in that, number one, especially that record or that song, there's a demo had been made for it. As a matter of fact, they made demos on everything. The demos were already made, and they made them. And what they do is Walter would play guitar and bass, and then Fagan would play synthesizer and piano, and they'd use, and Jeff Becerra. And that would be a demo. Now the demo would already be what they want as far as the groove is concerned. Excuse me, Jeff reads music, but I don't really think that, I think that Walter and Fagan, they read a little bit, but they were not reading musicians, being writers. So songs like that came to us in rhythm composite sheet form. They had the melody up top, or the guitar part up. Well, it would just be, it was always a composite rhythm sheet that everyone used. And all they did was make sure that all the licks were written. I mean, not notated, but like just with slashes. Like if it's down, you get 4 across the bar, and if they wanted to be it would just be slashes and no note. But then the chord chart with the bass, like if it's G minor over D or something like that. The only rules that I had from those guys were that they did not like the bass to slap. They didn't want me to slap the bass. Which a lot of stuff that they did, I thought that a slapping bass would have been perfect. Their reason for it was they thought that it was too common, and they wanted to be a little different. And I kind of think from where they're coming from, the jazz pop and jazz rock is more of what they were trying to get out of it. And this sort of thing just wasn't their idea of jazz or jazz pop. But those records were all, Your Gold Teeth, I remember, was really interesting in that it had, the time signature went from 6/8 to 9/8. And I think they even had a 3/8 bar in there that they took out because 3/8 kind of turns the beat around. But we had to read through changes of 3/4, 6/8, and 9/8. And no music was written. Sometimes if you have something written where that it's been articulated or something notated, it's easier to read notation than to read sometimes just empty spaces with slash marks, because then whatever it is you create, you got to make it blend or tie in. Those records were done at least 3 times with the same bass player, who fortunately was me in my case. So by the time we get to the third drummer or to the second rhythm section or the third rhythm section, I've seen it before, I've sort of experienced it before, the melodies are the same. And so it's kind of easy that way. I know Asia was very easy in that I did it about 6 or 7 times. So I think it sounds real good, the record sounds great. And I'm wondering how great it would have sounded if what I played had been aired the first time, like the other bass players that they did use. They just make a decision, who should we use? Well, they never liked the bass player up until the Gaucho. and they start digging what the other guys were playing. As a matter of fact, I was the last guy to play that on Gaucho. Now, I had been the first guy, but now I'm the last guy, although nothing stays the same. I knew it was going to happen that way sooner or later. You run across an era or a group of guys who, you know, they just would be satisfied with their playing.
Did you use a fretless hand slap on Josie?
Fretless?
Yeah.
No, I can't play a fretless. It's just, I can't play it. I mean, I can play it, but not successfully at all. I bought this bass when I got out of the Army in 1960, and I've been stuck with it for the rest of my life. I cannot even begin to professionally play the fretted instrument. I did get away, I think, is there a slap part on Josie?
I don't know, I thought I heard one.
Maybe on peg.
On peg, there's one little area on peg,
Chorus.
and I kind of begged for that. And they sort of agreed. Becker was very understanding that he was a bass player, or he knew enough about the instrument, and that worked. But all the other stuff, even if it sounded good on Fagan's Nightfly album, great slapping part if they would have allowed it, but they didn't. I had to play it with my fingers. They just didn't like that. But the fretless, no, I wish I could. I love the way it sounds, but I stay out of tune, get lost. And then plus two, my habit is to play in the square area as opposed to on the fret or behind the fret. I look at the fingerboard like these are squares instead of frets. If I had to look at the fret, I would be totally, it's like playing the stick. It would just turn me around altogether. I can't see you guys at all. Somebody got their hand up, or just start talking if there is. You want to play that tape now for me? 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you. You can keep the tape going. I might as well keep on.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you. The guitar player, by the way, his name is Joe Lee from Amarillo. An absolutely incredible guitar player. One of those guys that should be, or I shouldn't say should be, if he were in LA or New York, he'd be a great studio side man and also a great lead guitar player. That was called Stratocat. I think of it as a drum, and a lot of guys get hung up in trying to think of what to play, whereas I've already got it mapped out before I get to the gig, especially if it's an impromptu situation. Either I'm going to play, and no matter what key I am, right now I'll go, well, I'll do that's all I'll do. Everything that I think about, I'll think of a rhythm pattern, a drum pattern. Like I'll be the frustrated drummer that I am. I'm a frustrated drummer too. I tried that and it didn't work too well. So when I play the bass, I sort of try and make up for it in rhythm. But I've got every time I slap, it'll be something off of that rhythm. So no matter what the groove is, it's going to either be, for me, it's going to either be a type or a sometimes I might turn it around into a I'm thinking of it as an eighth note, 2/16, or 2/16 notes and an eighth note, either da 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 or doom da da. In this case is, and this one is my complicated pattern of the. Also, too, when I'm playing, I got my habits are 1-3-7. If it's funk, if it ain't funk, it's still 1-3-7. Sometimes I'll put the 5 in. I do play 1-5 all the time, but a lot of times when you get a chord chart or an idea, if you just have, I've always had a habit that I always played the same kind of thing, back and forth. Slapping wise, I've got a kind of thing going where I usually get quite a bit of speed sometimes out of something like that. If it's that kind of a thing. I always beat into my stomach and out. I never play up or down because I can't. I like to get a lot of speed. I also slap on one string sometimes too, like. So I've got it going back and forth on one string. Anything out of that, I don't attempt it too much. I will pat the bass like this. When I'm sitting, the bass is usually a little higher, and I can pat with a little bit more accuracy. Usually when I stand and play, I don't pat much unless it's a ballad, and I might pat it. But aside from those things, I don't do much more than that. There probably are a few variations that I do that I'm not able to pick up right now, but basically I'm thinking of or and maybe to play some if I have open strings. So those are all the habits that I have. I usually like to slap on one string, but sometimes it doesn't quite come off. I think flat wound strings don't really bring out the personality of a slap as much as a round wound string at all.
Is that what you've got there?
These are flat, yeah. So the round strings have so much more ring to it and a lot more sustain than I think these do. However, it doesn't sound bad record-wise. And I think once if I were to fool around a little bit with the tone of the amplifier, I think it'd be a lot better for these strings. But basically, if I'm on a slap, I'll just snip them off and put on round wound strings.
You mentioned reggae. Do you find that feel different than blues or funk?
Oh yeah, it's different for sure. I find it different, but I really don't. It's the same thing in a way, because if you take a lot of those lines,
It still has that heavy bottom on it.
Did you just say something?
I said it still has that heavy bottom on it.
Yeah. It all depends on what's happening in the music. To me, like I play this. A lot of people say it's a reggae bass line. It can be, but it ends up being great for funk, jazz, pop, depending upon what's going on. I'll play that, and like when I was playing that as a habit, I didn't think it was reggae. I mean, I heard reggae, but I wouldn't explain it that way, although it does sound that way. I think it's all the same depending on where the accents are. A definite dominant reggae bass will come off reggae. It probably wouldn't fit in funk or jazz rock, but it is a different sound. That one little habit that I got, I guess, I describe it as reggae only because that it's close to a reggae bass line. But it's definitely different. I mean, those kind of lines are different. I always throw in everything that I possibly can, especially if it, a lot of times you don't think it's going to fit, but you don't know that until you play it. And then that's the helter-skelter part of what's going on. You got to make sure you just don't intimidate the drummer or the piano player. A lot of guys start playing a lot of chords, and when you start doing that, you're stepping on the piano player's toes. So it's best to wait until you figure out his habit. Like you work with, just pick out Rickie T. I can't help it. He's the most phenomenal person I've known. Rickie T, Sonny Burke. And they have habits. And once you see where their spaces are, then they appreciate you putting a little dipsy roop in there or something like that. But not while they're playing their thing. So it's best to wait until you learn the guys. And it only takes probably 1 or 2 songs of not reading notated music. 1 or 2 songs of just playing chord charted music. They're doing the same thing. So all the little things I want to do, I sort of, if I haven't worked with the guy before, I definitely don't play any of those things and get me in trouble. The worst thing you can do is get somebody a little pissed at you. In that if it's the wrong guy, it can hurt. Although you can say, well, I don't care, but you should. The time not to care is once you've made it. And you are just as much an entity as the guy is, the other guy is. I think it's always best just to be very aware and sensitive to somebody else's space. I say that because it ticks me off when the drummer loses time or pushes time, or he's trying to make me play something by playing a very obvious foot pattern that just don't fit. In other words, he's not listening to me. I can't help but hear him. I think it should be an even-steven kind of thing. I'm more or less thinking of rudiments, playing a drum pattern, even on things that are I'm not counting. I think I'm more feeling that is a 2-bar phrase, and I'm just trying to get as much stuff in as I possibly can and have it rhythmic. And by using certain kind of slip and slide techniques, but I'm definitely not counting it at all. As a matter of fact, anything that's syncopated, I more or less see myself as a drummer.
Ideas to base your patterns off?
No. although I've always been abreast to drum rudiments, I know when I used to sit down and in sitting with students one-on-one, one way to build up that one finger back and forth technique, if a guy is interested, is to play a drum cadence. I mean, if I ever goes, because when I use it, I'm primarily thinking of a pattern, and the pattern has to. It's got to be a drum pattern.
Same idea would work.
Yeah, the same way we're working at. Those books that I were talking about in the improvisation book, it consists of that one finger back and forth technique, and I must list about there's probably about 10 drum rudiments that I have in exercise form that go from, because it's really this muscle that helps do that. And most players don't have it, and I've got a real Hercules kind of guy going there. I hope. right, thanks a lot. Every time I come up here, it's always feel like it's going to be easy. It ain't never easy. And if you're quietly good, that's going to get you further than being good and annoying, I think. This kind of organization that you have there, you guys really got to be proud of it. They got a lot of schools over the country, and they're made up with a lot of different kind of people, especially people that run the school. And like around here, you really got I got a very healthy respect for the people that are here, that are really trying to do the best they can and giving people that are here just that little added experience in just playing. I'm gonna slowly wind this down. It's nice seeing you guys. You guys hold on and do everything that you can. The rules are made to be broken. But at the same time, it's always best to be aware that the rule is still a rule, no matter what it is. But most people find, like out here in this world, it's amazing what can happen to you if you happen to click. You can make $10,000 a year, or you can make $200,000. I would imagine a guy like Steve Gadd, or a guy like I know Nathan. I don't know him real well, but we're friends. And just looking at, because I've been that way, a guy like that makes between $100,000 and $200,000 a year just playing his bass. A guy like Larry, the same kind of money. It's very fruitful out there. The instrument's not the only thing, though. It's the way you look. That doesn't mean that you got to dress a certain way. Number one is just to be very secure in your acts. And it's real hip to know everybody else's style. Like I did a couple of gigs where I normally, like it was Stanley's gig. I do not play upright. He wouldn't have played upright on this gig, but they couldn't get him. And so they hired me. And at the same time, I've gotten my own reputation, my own style. And the guy says, we tried to get Stanley and we couldn't get him. Do you know anything about him? I said, I know enough about him to know what I think you want. And when I went on that gig, I tried to play how I thought Stanley played. The next time they couldn't get Stanley, they called Chuck. Now it's a business to me, and it's going to be a business to you, even if it's not studio. It's a business in a way that I got a big ego about my thoughts and how I do it. Somebody wants me to play like Jocko, they're in trouble. But I think that I can emulate enough of how I think. Usually if they want Jocko, they've got the kind of music that he really stands out on. If they want Marcus Miller and they can't get him and they got me, I can go enough that way that they'll be satisfied, because I check it out. And to try and emulate the guy, especially the guys who are happening. And it's the same way with one of you guys. If I happen to walk by the room and I hear you doing something that's really interesting, I'm just like anybody else. I'm going to listen, and if I like it, I'm going to emulate it somewhere. And so you guys too got to keep that in mind. When you hear something you like, that's your spirit telling you you're going to like it, you're going to need it someday. The guys playing something that you like, do what they've been doing all through the history of these things and music. And don't let anybody lead you any other kind of way. If you like what a guy's playing, try and play it, because one day you're going to need to know how he played it. You're never going to play it the way that he... A lot of people walk around worried about getting ripped off, and believe me, there's no such thing as getting ripped off. Nobody's going to play anything like you're going to play it. You might give somebody else an idea, but while you're giving ideas out, the ideas are coming to you like they're coming out. And all I got to do is hear it. I don't have to watch it. I don't have to see it. All I got to do is hear it. And if I like it, it's ripped off. That's the way everybody is, whether they, if you want to look at getting ripped off. But it's not that. I don't look at it getting ripped off. If I hear something that I like, and I say, wow, that sure is nice. The first thing I'm going to do, because I love this, I'm going to say, wow, how did he do that? Like Van Halen's got me sitting down, because I like it. And I did a date last week, as a matter of fact, where it came in handy on a jingle. 32nd spot, G minor. About maybe 36, well, I shouldn't say 36, but they've got 16 to do. You know, and no one else around there did that. You know, I set up and I watched him on a video do it. I said, wow. But I mean, I can't rip him off. Everybody knows that at least I saw him do it first. The same way with my lines. A lot of people try or will emulate something that I played, which is fine with me. You know, I've never did one of these kind of things, you know, to play something and unless it's let me do this and you figure out how I did it kind of thing. But a musician can hear, or any musician can hear, bass players listen to the guitar players listen to the bass players, and if you like it, find out how to do it, because your career, I mean, you could be simple as rich or famous one day, if it's no more than just to satisfy your own personal thing of what you want to do. You got to play everything that you hear. If it's a bird, or if some kids laughing, even if it's a drummer, and he's playing something that they're trying to, how can I do that? You know, like it's a piano player's thing. There's a lot of reservation a lot of bass players have too, and we shouldn't be as reserved as we are, because a few of us that aren't reserved are the ones who get the gigs. You know, you gotta be a little macho about the acts. You gotta really go out and just do it, but it shouldn't take you long to find out whether it works or not. It should be almost immediate. Once you do it, practicing has nothing to do with the live gig. You can practice it, and as soon as you try it once on the gig, you can tell immediately whether it works or not. If it don't work, don't fool with it again. If it works, overdo it. You know, or something that's good, even if you overdo it, it's okay, if it's good. I got a kick out of here. I enjoyed myself very much. Thanks a whole lot.